Okay. I should be. Hello everybody. Hello Facebook. Yes, this is another Facebook video which will remain only on Facebook until I change my mind and upload it to YouTube. But anyway, this is me again. I'm making another follow-up video to the one I made before about movies. Or films, depending on what you want to call them. Someone says movies is American and films is British. I don't know if that's true. I personally have used both. But I suddenly realised that I think it was Best Movies was the title of the last one I made about this, the last video I made on this particular subject, when really it wasn't actually about the best movies. It was the best in a particular genre. I think it was horror films and romantic comedies. I remember which films scared me the most and which films I thought were the best romantic comedies. This is a follow-up in which I'm going to talk about, firstly, what I think are the best comedies generally, and none of my favourite comedies are actually on my list of romantic comedies at all. And then I'm going to talk about the best films I've ever seen overall. That's basically the best films, what I consider the best films, and then I'm going to talk about, I've got a couple of other movies I want to talk about. So one Jam Noise 72 on YouTube alerted me to, and I've done a written review of that. I'll be talking about that. But anyway, let us begin. My funniest films, best comedies. What are the funniest films I've ever seen? So my brother Porter, who gave me the assignment last time, I hope you're watching. You can take this to the crew and share it around. Pride and dignity to you, by the way. I think the decision of what's my best ever film is quite an easy one. It's Cloud Atlas. Cloud Atlas. Now this is a film from 2012, that fateful date, and it was actually by the Wachowskis. You know, the people who brought The Matrix and things like that. There's several assistant directors as well, because it's actually like it's kind of an anthology. It's based on a novel that's actually split into six different stories overall. The film's different from the novel in it sort of intersperses them all in different places rather than just does one out of the other. It had very mixed reviews actually. It's been nominated by some critics, the bloody critics, for best film and sometimes for worst film. It's actually, I personally, in terms of the polarization it's done with the critics, because some of them really hated it, sod the critics. I put it definitely on the best film. I think it's the best film I've ever seen, without a doubt. I still remember I went to see it in the cinema when it first was released, and it was stunning. It was one of those films where you come out of the cinema and you look around yourself and it's like you're in a different world when you come out. It totally absorbed me. Even today, I can't watch it that often. It's not a film I can just dip in and out of. I have to put aside a couple of hours. I mean, it is a long film. It's over 3 hours long. I think it's an epic. But I also need a couple of hours afterwards just to recover from it. And I can't just dip in and out of it. I've got to watch it all the way through from the start to the finish. It's actually it's an independent film. It's actually one of the highest budget independent films in history. It was put together by several private filmmakers, and it was almost cancelled at some point. It actually had a budget of about $100 million US. It grossed, I think, a bit more than that, but so it didn't flop at all. But it was almost cancelled simply through finances, but it was actually finished through. It was funded partly by donations from the cast and crew. They essentially took over and said, "Well, we'll pay for this." So the actors and the directors and the people involved in it actually just said, "We want to finish this film. We really believe in what we're doing, and we want to finish it." It's a very ambitious production. It has a lot of big Hollywood names. Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Jim Broadbent, Hugo Weaving, and several others. There's Hugh Grant's in it. But it has it's on the scale in that sense. It has the feel of a big Hollywood blockbuster. It doesn't feel like an independent film, which tend to be low budget and simple. Now, the story is incredible because the story is also epic in its scope, because the different scenarios are spaced apart in time by about 500 years from start to finish. It begins in the past. There's one scenario in the 19th century, there's another in the 1930s, there's another in the early 70s, then there's another in the present day, which that one's quite light-hearted and almost comedic. It's very good. Jim Broadbent is fantastic in that particular scenario. And Tom Hanks is actually in it. He plays this violent gypsy novelist who he kills a guy by throwing him off a balcony. It's really funny. It's sort of black humour sort of thing. And then there are two scenarios in the future. One is in a sort of strangely sort of cyberpunk Korea. You don't know where it is at first. It turns out it's in Korea, where the sea level's risen, and the next one is on Hawaii, but it's a kind of like weird kind of post-apocalyptic tribal society. There's two futuristic scenarios. Very, very good indeed. It's implied. It's not actually described, but it's implied very strongly that they essentially this is like a group of souls who reincarnate. There's a kind of multiple lifetime stories, and in each particular scenario they influence the next one. The characters recur and they change their relationships, almost on a kind of karmic level. But you know which soul is which because they're played by that particular actor. Like Tom Hanks, who I just mentioned, was this violent gypsy in one scenario. In the one before, he was this sort of mild-mannered nuclear scientist. In the one before that, he's just a hotel receptionist. You know, he just plays a minor role in the 1930s one. And in the original ones, in the 1849 scenario, he's this really evil guy. He's a horrible. He's a sort of quack doctor who tries to kill one of the other cast members. You know, and it's almost like it's a very sort of Hindu vision of the journey of souls, the lives that we have, and how we reincarnate. It suggests reincarnation. It's very, very interesting indeed. And like I said, if you haven't seen it, do watch it. It's fantastic. It's beyond fantastic. Well, you may think otherwise. I mean, I remember I was a member of the original David Icke forum when this particular film appeared, and everyone says, Ben, people who went to see it said, Ben, you've got to see it. You've got to see this. It's fantastic. And I said, all right, I'll go and see it. And I always get suspicious of something that's overhyped. I thought, well, it can't be that good, can it? Well, it was. It was that good and more. I wrote a full-length review on Hapanwo on the Hapanwo blog, the main Hapanwo blog. Actually, if you want to go and look at that, I'm not going to put a link in the description box. You can find it. Right, on to my second favourite film. Now, my second favourite film. This was a bit more difficult to encounter. I mean, it's quite the best film's easy. The second favourite film, sorting it out from the others, was a bit more difficult. But I would say my second favourite film is Sleuth. Now, Sleuth is, and when I'm referring to Sleuth, I'm talking about the original 1972 one. It's very easy to get it mixed up with the remake because there was actually a remake which was in 2007. I think it was. Let me just check. Yes, it was, and that also had Michael Caine in. And you've got to realise that even though it's got the same actor in, it's a completely different film, and it's not as good. I must say that the remake, the 2007 Sleuth, was, as a standalone movie, it's not bad. But you see, it does not match up in any way, shape or form to the original. The original, Mike Caine plays the other character. It's odd, actually, that you have a film with just two characters. Well, there's a third minor character, but there's two main characters, and nearly all the film consists of just these two characters. To have a film, an entire full-length movie with just two characters and the dialogue between them and the interaction between them was incredible. It was written by Anthony Shaffer, who's quite he wrote several other plays. He wrote this one called Equus, which I didn't like, but it's directed by Joseph Mankiewicz and Laurence Olivier, Michael Caine. It's really incredible because Michael Caine wasn't as well known back then as he is now. He had his debut with Zulu, a film I'm going to talk about later on. And so he had his big screen debut. He was still quite minor compared to most other actors. He was a bit intimidated working alongside the great Laurence Olivier, you know, because Olivier at that point was getting old. He was near the end of his career. Michael Caine's was just burgeoning, and that's, in a sense, that's very much like the characters they play, because the theme of it is very much a battle of age versus youth. It's about love rivalry, and it's about deception and betrayal on an enormous level. The title Sleuth Sleuth is actually it's a word you don't hear very often nowadays, but it means like a private eye or an amateur detective, someone like Sherlock Holmes or Miss Marple or someone like that. They are sleuths. The older guy, Wyke is Olivier's character. He is a fiction writer. He writes detective fiction, and he loves the genre. And he was married to a much younger woman who has divorced him and is now in love with another man called Milo. Not him, not that Milo. Milo, you said Milo. He's got very religious lately, hasn't he? Yeah, he's got himself a Roman Catholic merch channel, hasn't he? So I'm going off topic. Now this guy Milo is played by Michael Caine, and he basically wants to discuss the situation. Look, I want a divorce so I can marry your wife. And at first, everything's going okay. They're cooperating, but then the whole thing turns on its head. There's a massive twist, and then a counter twist. It's about revenge. It's a really great story of anger and revenge and humiliation. Despite the fact, you know, there's not really much action in it as such. It's not an action movie. The drama comes simply from the dialogue. It's like that film Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It's similar to that. It's kind of like not quite kitchen sink drama, but Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is another really good film. Robert, what's his name's in it? I can't remember his name now. It'll come to me in a minute. But he's in it with Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton. That's it. And there's no real violence or action. It's just the whole thing. It's just the simple dialogue. Just the cut and thrust of words is enough to give it excitement and adventure. It's wonderful. It's very difficult to do that sort of thing. And as a writer myself, I admire that. I emulate it. I envy the skill of some of these writers. I really do. So do watch it. And unfortunately, it's a very difficult film to get hold of. It was a big hit at its time. It did well in the box office. There was a video run. There was a DVD run. The DVD run's finished now. You can't get it online. It's not on Netflix or on Amazon. There's a couple of freebies floating around, mostly with foreign subtitles on. But they really should produce this commercially for the home market. Because all the other films I'm talking about here are, well, most of them are. Excuse me. So I've not got the coof. It's just something went down the wrong way. There's another film. There's one other film actually that's not available on the home market, which should be. Yes, so do watch that if you can. Okay, now the third I've actually selected. There's two other films I want to discuss, and one's my third favourite and one's my fourth favourite, and I don't know which one's which. So I've just put them down as two third favourites. I don't want to choose between them, actually. It's a bit cheap to do that. I don't want to choose between them. I don't want to actually put any of the films I'm talking about this evening. I don't want to put them in any kind of order unless there's a good reason for it. My third favourite film, or fourth, whichever you like, is, along with the other I'm going to talk about, is V for Vendetta. Now, V for Vendetta, it hardly needs introducing. It's an absolute classic within the conspirasphere, within the area of radical politics. It's, I suppose, it's very it's Orwellian in the sense it has a left-wing theme. I suppose I think I know a lot of left-wing people who like it, but there's also people on the distant right who love this film. It's very like Orwell. Orwell is the same in that respect, but it's set in a futuristic Britain, and in which there is a fascist regime and totalitarianism is in place, and there's this resistor, this guy who you never see his face, which is unusual. You have a hero who wears this mask the whole time, this Guy Fawkes mask, And of course, that mask has become a cultural icon within distant circles, hasn't it? It's really become I see them everywhere. I see them at the Brexit rally, at the anti-lockdown marches and things like that. And it's really incredible. Now it's based on a graphic novel or comic, to use its more popular term. It's by Alan Moore. Now he was Alan Moore was he made these other things, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's another really great film, that is, actually. And From Hell, that's a good film if you've not seen it. If you're interested in like murder, mysteries, conspiratorial mysteries from the past, from history, do watch From Hell. This was interesting. It was brought out it was actually released on the 5th of November 2005, which is the 400th anniversary of the gunpowder plot. It is really, that's quite something, isn't it? And that was deliberate because, of course, the theme is of Guy Fawkes and things like that. And I actually covered this with Nick Colostrom on her Panama Radio last week, the whole Guy Fawkes thing. I won't go into it now. But, I mean, I don't really need to illustrate all the themes within this film, which it's a visual representation of really our entire scenario. And it includes things such as extrajudicial imprisonment, human experimentation, media propaganda, and media manipulation, mind control, cultural norms being engineered, false flag attacks, poisonings, water poisonings, things like that, bombings and things like that. This is amazing. This was only a few years after 9/11, wasn't it? Only a few years after 9/11, you have this film coming out. It's actually incredible. I mean, I went to see it at the cinema, and people were applauded at the end of it. You don't often get people applauding at the end of a film. They didn't do it for Cloud Atlas, but they did it for this. And it's really amazing. I mean, it's like, and it's also. You find out at the end, and again, this is why it's so close to 1984, because the final act of the film, in a sense, it's Evie, the main character, Natalie Portman's character. The battle she has is with herself. He engineers a situation where a fake situation in which she has to break out of her own internal prison, because as you know, if you watch the film, she's very much kind of she's not firmly on one side or the other. She's kind of like, on one side she's got this good citizen side to herself, but on the other hand she has this desire for rebellion. So she has this Winston Smith on one side of herself, but there's also a bit of Parsons in her too. And it's only at the end that the Winston Smith only comes out at the very end. But it ends happily. Now, I'll tell you, there's a fantastic supporting performance by Stephen Fry. And it's really, when I saw he was in the film, I said, oh, what, is this a comedy then? Because, of course, Fry is best known as a comedian. He's a comedy actor. He's been in Blackadder. He's been in Jeeves and Wooster. I always think of him as a comedy actor, but he's playing a straight role in this. I mean, straight in the sense, not comedic, because he actually plays, again, he's like Evie. He's a homosexual who has to suppress that. He's got to pretend not to be, because they don't like that in this society, and as indeed what used to be like in the past. And he says something interesting. He says you wear a false identity so much that you forget your real self. You forget who you really are. Fantastic film, fantastic. My other third favourite, or fourth favourite, again, I'm not going to put these in order, is Little Buddha. Now, you might be put off from this film because of its cast. It's got a rather strange cast, actually. Keanu Reeves is in it, and a lot of critics don't like that. They think he's bad for the role because he plays Prince Gautama, the man who became the Buddha. But he actually does it really well, I think. Another is Chris Isaak, the singer. But when you see that, you think, well, that's an odd choice of of actors to play, but it's actually, it works. It really works. This is a film. Now, there's several different versions of it. Do get the long extended version if you can. Again, it's difficult to get hold of on home media. It is available, but the actual it was YouTubed a couple of years ago. I don't. It's probably not on there anymore. But there is a long version of it as well, which is much better. And it's two stories in one. It's actually good. In one of the stories, and again, like with Cloud Atlas, the two stories intersect with each other, and they sometimes you get two scenes next to each other if they're similar. One of the scenes is set in the 5th century BC India and tells the story of Siddhartha or Gauta and how he became the Buddha. In fact, it's a very good introduction to Buddhism if you're new to it. That's essentially what it is. And the other is in modern day United States, and it's about a little boy who is believed to be the reincarnation of a Buddhist monk from Bhutan. And a group of monks from Bhutan come over to the United States to meet the family and see this little boy to find out if he really is the reincarnation. And a lot happens, and he ends up travelling to Bhutan to go through a ritual to see if he is the incarnation of this old lama, this teacher. And it's fantastic. It's very poetically done. It's very, very moving. It's sad, and at the end there's this lovely old guy, who's like the leader of the monks, and he's such a delightful sort of humorous old guy, and he dies at the end, and it's really sad. It's extremely sad. But it's by Bernardo Bertolucci, the guy who did what's the other wonderful film he did? What is it? Hang on. He did a fantastic film called not Last Tango in Paris is probably his best known film. I didn't think much of that. But what's that other one he did? The Sheltering Sky. Yeah, the Sheltering Sky, about these people travelling in North Africa. That was fantastic. And this is done in the same field. He uses a lot of coloured filters to get the right colours on the scenes and things like that. So it's a well composed visually. It's very well composed visually. The special effects are average, but it's just they usually standard non-special effects cinematic techniques. He really works hard to get the right atmosphere, and with the score as well. It's very, very good score. Fantastic film. It says here, the colour schemes used for the movie are red-orange for eastern locations, blue-grey for western locations. Yeah, and that's deliberate. So all the colours are all done deliberately. It's very, very well done indeed. He used a special camera and special film and stuff like that. Yes, brilliant. That was from 1993. So that's Little Buddha. So those are my 4 favourite movies: first, second, and third stroke fourth together. So let's go on to the funniest films I've ever seen. These are basically the best comedies in terms of the ones that I found the funniest. The funniest film I've ever seen is called The House in Nightmare Park. Now, this film you probably never heard of. It's not very well known. You can find it on home media. You can get it on DVD. There's also a few copies floating around online. It's an quite old 1973 film. So it's made the year after Sleuth. It seems to be a bit of a golden age for movies. That it really does. I like a lot of films from that era, and it's kind of like a gothic horror story. It's in its basis. But it's like the old dark house story, It's with the thunder rolling when the person walks up and rings the front door, things like that. And it's, when you go in, there's always like an old gramophone playing and something like that. And it has a lot of those tropes. It has a lot of the standard tropes to the extent it's kind of a parody. It is kind of a parody of that kind of film. It's what's really weird, because all the other characters are like, if you take out Frankie Howard, the star, all the other characters are like that. They're all like they're all part of a kind of old dark house sort of hammer horror type movie. That none of them are really funny. They're just like straight actors. In fact, they're very serious and grave. They're concocting some dastardly conspiracy involving inheritance and things like that, and murder, mystery, suspense, that kind of thing. And then into it comes Frankie Howerd, one of the greatest comedians in the world. He's like inserted into the story as himself. You know, he's basically playing himself. I mean, he's actually this sort of he's this sort of rather unsuccessful and not very popular actor called Foster 12 Trees. What a name. And he's kind of inserted into, he as himself is kind of inserted into this classic gothic horror story. And the result is hilarious. I've not laughed so much. It's so good. You know, the interaction between him and him in his sort of humorous self, and the others who are very serious and grave and they're planning some evil thing. It's yeah, I mean, do get to watch it if you can, because I think it's the funniest film I've ever seen, without a doubt. It's definitely the funniest film. Now, the second funniest film I've ever seen. This is the last funny films I'm going to do. I can't think of a third one. The second funniest film I've ever seen is Mars Attacks. Now, Mars Attacks is a remarkable film. It's a movie that was released in 1996, the same year as Independence Day. I think it was when was Independence Day released? Hang on, let's have a look. I'll get this right. Independence Day film. Oh yeah, 1996. It was released the same year. I think that's a really amazing thing, because Mars Attacks is the perfect antidote to anyone who hates Independence Day. And I loathe Independence Day. I can't stand it. It's a now Mars Attacks is a comedy alien invasion movie. And it's by Tim Burton, and it has you're in for a treat when Tim Burton is involved. And he tells the story about aliens from Mars coming down and trying to take over the world and destroy it, and kill everyone and things like that, which of course is what Independence Day is about. Well, the aliens don't come from Mars; they come from somewhere else. But in Mars Attacks, they come from Mars, and it has the same kind of standard Roland Emmerich type outline in terms of character and story. So, for example, you have like the president and all the government and them dealing with the subject. At the same time, you have profiles of ordinary people caught up in it. At the same time, you have like several families who are just living ordinary lives in the middle of this crisis. So it's that, in that way, it's like Independence Day. But the aliens are like the aliens are kind of like, they're like teenagers. You know, they're just out to have fun, really. And they have these laser guns which turn people into skeletons and things like that. But deep down, they're really just very, very humorous little aliens who do all kinds of weird crackpot things. They kidnap a person, they kidnap a woman and her dog, and they transplant the head from one to the other. Things like, just for fun, just for the hell of it. You don't find out why they're really doing anything. They're just like, it's just their sort of nature. You don't really know why. There's other various individuals. It's very, very Emmerich-esque, actually, in terms of the different characters that come into it. But it's done. It's also has a. It's also intended as a satire on like 1950s pulp sci-fi. Evil alien movies. In fact, the spaceships, the Martians fly in these spaceships that are identical to the ones in the Earth versus Flying Saucers, which is an alien invasion movie from 1956. If you've not seen it, that's good, actually, if you've not seen it. It was actually made with the help of real ufologists, so pretty good. But it's beyond funny. It's almost too funny to laugh at. It's painfully funny. It really is. I was just, from the very start to the very end, all the characters are like wonderful. They're all wonderful kind of they're all wonderful caricatures, like Pierce Brosnan's character. He plays this scientist. There's Rod Steiger playing this very sort of militant, hawkish general, and there's this other general who's kind of like the president's pet. It's beyond funny. It's beyond funny, and the hero in the end is this old lady played by Sylvia Sidney, who's a really classic old actress. from starting in the 1930s. She comes in the night. She was very, very famous in the 1930s, and she comes back as this old lady in this film. It was her last ever movie. She's born in 1910, and was very well loved in the old Hollywood golden age. And she plays this rather dotty old lady, but eventually she's the one who saves the day. She's the one. She has the secret of saving the world. And of course, as with War of the Worlds, there's this kind of like Deus Ex Machina, which you probably wouldn't tolerate in a serious film. There's this kind of Deus Ex Machina in the end, because at the end there's a very the solution to saving the world from the aliens is like inserted rather bluntly into the story, almost as an act of convenience, which you probably wouldn't tolerate in anything other than a comedy. But it's done so well. It's done so well. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I'll give you a clue. It's the Indian Love Call song. Oh, please do watch it. It's just such good fun. What I actually find interesting about both these films, The House in Nightmare Park and Mars Attacks, the two funniest films I've ever seen, is that both have something in common. Both are parodies. Both are satires attempting to emulate, in a humorous way, classic movie styles. In the case of Mars Attacks, it's the sort of like, it's both the pulp sci-fi fiction, but also the modern, rather cheap alien invasion story. In the case of House of Nightmare Park, it's gothic horror of the sort of Hammer House variety, the old creepy building and the thunderstorm type horror. Yeah, it's interesting. They have those things in common, and they're both films I love, which says, I think, an awful lot about my sense of humour. I can't think of like a third or fourth favourite. I can't think of any other funny. There's probably about a dozen films I could say were my third favourite. Probably one of the Carry Ons films, maybe one of the Ealing comedies, possibly. Some Like It Hot's very good. That's a Billy Wilder movie from America. Okay, on reflection, I have decided what the third funniest film I've ever seen is. I thought I'd add it to this film right at this point. It is a film called The World's End. Now, The World's End is an Edgar Wright comedy. It was directed by him, it was written by Simon Pegg and him, and has Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in it. So it's part of this unofficial series of films known as the Cornetto trilogy. The others are, of course, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, which are both really, really good. Shaun of the Dead is another of these. It's an affectionate parody of a particular style, that is the zombie movie. That's very good as well. But I have to say, The World's End it's actually funny. I mean, I'm whether I think this is my third favourite or Hot Fuzz, because another time I said actually Hot Fuzz was the best of those films. However, I think I have to choose this one simply because, and this is going to sound a bit weird, but I consider it a hospital portering movie, which is really strange. There aren't many hospital portering movies. There are less than a dozen. And you may think, well, why? This film is not set in a hospital. None of the characters are hospital porters, so why do I consider it an archetypal hospital portering movie? In fact, I did an article on HPWA blog calling it the ultimate hospital portering movie. And it's partly wishful thinking, because hospital portering movies tend to be very bad. There's only, like I said, there's less than a dozen of them, and they tend to be bloody awful, like Paper Mask, which is one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's patronising and it's insulting to the hospital portering service in the extreme. But The World's End embodies, probably unintentionally, a primal portrait of hospital portering culture. Because the characters all remind me of men I served alongside in the HPS. It could be coincidence, it could be just me wishful thinking, or I'm seeing that myself when it maybe not be there. But it's not just them. I mean, there's the other people within. there's other people that remind me of like doctors and nurses and people like that. And the characters are the main characters. That is there are like 5 principal characters within the film, and they are, all of them embody what I think of as classic personality types of the hospital portering service. There's the there's the kind of I won't go through them all, but there's different types of people I think seem to be drawn to hospital portering, and the 5 main characters within it they represent those types of people. And at the heart of the story of World's End, and also Hospital Portering Society, is alcoholic drink. It could be a pint after your 2 to 10. It could be fighting a hangover on your first morning 6 to 2. A wild bender at the Park End Club on your first night off. Wondering if you can get away with a shot of vodka before your night shift during the afternoon. If you're a hospital porter, then you will have a relationship to the demon drink, whether you like it or not, even if you are teetotal. And I've yet to meet a teetotal hospital porter. I think such a thing doesn't exist. It's a contradiction. It's like non-stick glue. A teetotal hospital porter cannot happen. If there ever was one, the entire universe would disintegrate because the laws of physics would be broken. And there's... So dear. It's just because at the end, like, they're all totally drunk, and this guy, one of the main character, Simon Pegg's character, he shouts, there's this big alien computer eye looming over him, and he shouts, "Oh, fuck off, you big lamp!" Only a true hospital porter could say those words. Oh, yeah. That's all right. That's my 3rd favourite comedy film. So let's go. I just want to bring in a couple of other things. Now, Jam Noise 72... God bless her, she made me aware of something called Silent Night. Now, for those of you who read her Panmo Voice, which is about 5% of you, you'll know that I wrote a review of this the other day. It's a Christmas film. It's directed by someone called Camille Griffin. It's only just been released. It's only showing. It's actually on limited release at the moment. It was quite hard to find a cinema. It was quite to show it. I was thinking of doing like a roving review for Hapanmo TV, but I didn't have the time. But you know, Christmas films are generally sort of light-hearted, happy, humorous, sentimental, uplifting for your family dramas, things like that. Well, Silent Night is a pretty big exception to the rule. It's very grim. It's very dark. It's supposed to be a black comedy, and I didn't find it very funny. It has its droll moments, but it's actually extremely tragic. And I think it's loosely based on a book actually called On the Beach by Neville Shute. Now, this is a quite famous novel. It was written in the 1950s. It was inspired by the Bikini Atoll nuclear tests, if you remember, this was in the South Pacific. The Americans blew up some nuclear bombs to test them, and it poisoned the local area with radioactive fallout to the extent that in Bikini Atoll today, if you catch a fish, you can't sell it because it's not safe. Even now, over 70 years later, you still can't eat the fish. Well, you shouldn't eat the fish you catch in that lagoon. What happens is this group of old friends meet up to spend Christmas together in this country house, and you think everything's fine at first, but it's little by little you realise there's some kind of anomaly, something's not right. One of the characters has a black eye, and they talk about having to fight and steal Christmas presents, and they say, "Did you see the Queen's speech?" "Oh yes, it was in this underground bunker, surrounded by canned food." What? And it's very well done actually. The characters are trying to act cheerfully. There's like a forced bittersweet element to them. It's something we British do very well, actually. You know something is very, very wrong. I'll include maybe a few spoilers in this. I won't put all the spoilers I did on the. I won't put the spoilers in that I did on the written review, because the reason Jam Noise let me know about this is that basically the Earth's about to be destroyed by an environmental disaster, and even though it's not really explained exactly what it is, there's this toxic cloud, and it's implied this is linked to climate change, or it's implied it's linked to human abuse of the Earth's biosphere. One of the characters says, "Oh, if only we'd voted green." I must say the acting is really good in this. There's this one woman, the woman who says, "Oh, if only we'd voted Green." She's such a good actress, and a lot of the main characters are small children as well, and they're really good considering their age. They're really, really good. And as with On the Beach, the government has given people basically poison pills to take, so they can finish themselves off before the end. What's really interesting is the ending of the film. The last scene is really weird because the poison cloud engulfs the earth, but then at the end, everything seems normal. They just wake up and it's snowing and it's Boxing Day and everything looks normal. But then you're not really. The boy, one of the boys, his eyes opens at the end. He's the boy who's supposed to be dead, and it's like, what's going on? I mean, is it some kind of zombie? Is he being converted into the undead by these fumes? Or are they in heaven? Maybe they've all died and this is their entry into the spirit world. I mean, people who people I talk to in terms of mediumship and psychical research say that some spirits report that. They report that when they first die, they actually encounter something a bit like that, like they're into an area which is quite familiar. It's a familiar surrounding, which gradually, bit by bit, at first they don't realise they're dead, and bit by bit they realise they've moved on. Yeah, it's always worth. I waited for the ending of the film, like I always do. I don't walk out until the curtain is drawn, and so I read all the credits. There's a COVID safety expert in the credits. How often do you? I've never seen one of those before. Funnily enough, that dystopian fiction tends to emerge during times of crisis and hardship. Like, for example, in the mid 2000s, after 9/11, and then there was the stock market crash in 2008. There was a lot of dystopian fiction came out at that time. For example, The Road, which is a really depressing movie. Yeah. So it's a Christmas movie. It's definitely seasonable in theme. But if you've got a family get together and you want some Christmas goodwill, maybe this isn't the one to watch. Stick to the Muppets Christmas Carol. Now, I was very, very disappointed to see that Zulu has been cancelled. Can you believe that? One of the greatest British films of all time. It's 1964 epic. That was Michael Caine's big screen debut, and It's been cancelled. There's been attempt. I mean, basically, it's been listed for disposal by the wokist community. And again, I'm not going to repeat what I wrote on Herpanmo Voice about this. Please do go and read that blog because I know hardly any of you do, but I did a long rant about this on there because I just thought it was disgusting. It's disgusting. What happens is there was going to be a charity screening. There was an armed forces charity that was raising money, and they wanted to do a little screening. It was actually on the anniversary of the Battle of Rorke's Drift in 1879. They were going to do a screening on the anniversary, and a number of horrible little left-wing lovies they didn't write to the organisers, they wrote to the mayor of Folkestone, and they said, "We think this should be stopped because it has racist overtones. It has racist overtones that harm social cohesion. It has a negative effect on relationships within Britain's changing and richly diverse communities." Well, if that's the case, I couldn't give a damn. Even if that was true, people should still be allowed to watch it. Secondly, it's not true. It's not any of those things. In fact, the film portrays the Zulus very respectfully. They are brave, they're honourable, and they're cunning tacticians. In fact, in the dramatic final scene, if you remember what happens, I know it's not historically accurate, I don't care. But the Zulus, they line up to sing and dance, and the British in this place, this mission which they're defending, they think it's a prelude to another attack. But then, you find out, in fact, the Zulus have given up, and they're saluting their enemies for being great warriors. The message of the story, it's a unique war film, really, in that respect. The message of the story is you can get into conflict with other people, even very violent conflict, and yet not lose your humanity. It's a very, very positive, wonderfully positive theme. But you know what the wokists are like? They're anti-intellectual. They think in one dimension. They just see white people facing black people, and it has to be racist. It's racism. I mean, we're all familiar with the excesses of wokeism. This surely has to be the most ridiculous. And you know what? The charity and the organisers told them to get knotted. They refused. They refused to cancel it, and the screening went ahead. And the idiotic snowflakes could do nothing about it because people were standing up to them, and the people weren't scared of them. We need to see more of that kind of resistance, because these aren't very impressive people. These are usually overweight students who've got nothing better to do with their lives. It's not like they're really very intimidating individuals, are they? So yeah, that's so please do go and check that out on Her Pan My Voice. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, all of you. Appreciate that. As I said, I was going to make this a Facebook exclusive, but I'll probably change my mind and put it on YouTube. I'm going to do another. By the way, if you do watch me on YouTube, I'm going to be doing a couple of other videos very soon. I have. I'm going to the Basis Project conference. There'll be a reportage of that. I also want to do a live stream about Pearl Harbor, because it is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Now, by the time I get that live stream done, it'll be after the anniversary. But I don't have time. I simply don't have time this week. So it'll probably be sometime next week. I'll do that live stream. I might even. The weekend seems. I might even leave it for the weekend, because the weekend seems to be a good time for live streams. I get a lot of viewers then. Oh, but thank you very much, all of you. I much appreciate it. Thank you, Facebook, for watching. Take care, all of you. See you again soon. And if you're going to the Basis Project conference, see you there.